Ja, guten Tag, liebe österreichische Freunde. Ja, es tut mir außerordentlich leid, aber das deutsche oder österreichische Sprache kann ich nicht. So I have to change to English. I guess you don't understand my language, Icelandic. So let's meet each other in English. Yeah, we're gonna talk about a flipped classroom. We are trying to have this workshop a little bit flipped. So we want you to listen to what we have to say here on this video. All right, let's start with the shoe. How about it? Well, what am I doing with a shoe on a respectful conference like this? Let's say that I was teaching a class with 25 children, and I came with shoes into my classroom and I said, hey kids, I'm gonna give you a pair of shoes for all of you. Everyone would get very happy, but there is one little problem. All shoes are of the same number 40, which means that the shoe is too big for someone and too small for others. This is exactly how the school system works. It's one size supposed to fit everyone. But that doesn't work. And that's the reason we are trying to do something else, like flipping our classroom. Yeah, one size fits all. Look at the classroom. Let's look into the classroom. Are you familiar with this classroom? Have you seen it? Is this maybe your classroom? But where's the teacher in this typical lecturing classroom? Let's watch him. Listen carefully.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which, anyone raised or lowered? Raised tariffs in an effort to collect more revenue for the federal government. Did it work? Anyone? Anyone know the effects? It did not work, and the United States sank deeper into the Great Depression. Today, we have a similar debate over this. Anyone know what this is, class? Anyone? Anyone? Anyone seen this before? The Laffer curve. Anyone know what this says? It says that at this point on the revenue curve, you will get exactly the same amount of revenue as at this point. This is very controversial. Does anyone know what Vice President Bush called this in 1980? Anyone? Something DOO economics. Voodoo.
This was the teacher. I hope none of you are familiar with it, or are you? But I think we have experienced ourselves, or maybe we are like this to some degree. But what happens in the brain of our students when they are sitting all day listening to us lecturing? Look at the slide here. It is very interesting to see on the slides what happens during, let's say, when you're sleeping. You see there are a lot of activities. There's a lot going on in the brain. But look what is happening in the classroom when the teacher is giving his or her lectures. Nothing is happening in the brain. So we can also see here that when they are working on some assignments, the brain is very active. So consequently, shouldn't we plan our schools so they create some activities in the head of our students? So let's this brain research help us when we are organizing the schools. We want the brain to be active. We don't want this passive brain when we are working with our students. So one way of planning a school is to take this flipped learning method. What is flipped learning? Let's look at a short video with Aaron Sam, one of the godfathers of flipped classroom. Look at it.
I'm Aaron Sams, and I teach science here at Woodland Park High School. My ultimate goal, I guess, as a teacher is to help students become learners who can learn for themselves and by themselves. One of the problems that I was guilty of even prior to flipping my classroom around was the classroom was centered around me. I told them exactly what to learn, how to learn it, what assignments to do to learn it, and when to learn it, and how to prove to me that they learned it. I don't do that anymore. We changed the place in which content is delivered. Instead of standing in front of a class and delivering, here's how you do this type of problem, here's how this works, I deliver that direct instruction now asynchronously at home through these videos that we make with Camtasia Studio.
Times till whole.
Oh, we didn't do that last time.
The last step, they were already whole numbers. We had 1, 1, and 4. Here we don't have a whole number. So here's a few little tricks when you need to multiply by whole numbers. If one of your numbers ends in 0.5, you're going to multiply by 2.
Or something 0.5 times it by 2.
Right.
Okay, write this down, guys.
Yes. If something ends in 0.3 or 0.33 or 0.66, you multiply by 3.
And when the kids come to class, they don't show up to learn new stuff. They show up to apply the things that they learn at home and to ask me questions about the things they learned at home. So now they could have my lesson, if you will, what I would normally have stood up and lectured to them in class with some added features. They get that at home. And then what they were expected to do for homework is now what they do in my class. Life is different for me because I no longer am the guy who stands up in the front of the classroom and just yaks at his students for an hour or however long the class is. Now I walk around the class and I help kids. I'm a tutor, I'm a guide, I'm the putter-outer of fires, whatever it happens to be in my crazy chemistry class. I walk around and do that. I don't stand up front and teach under the kind of the traditional model. I'm Aaron Sams. I'm a teacher, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I love Camtasia Studio.
So, folks, I'd like to point out how important it is to have good relationship between the teacher and the students, but also the culture of good relationship also between the students. When we are preaching all the time, anyone, like the guy we listen to, there is very little relationship actually between the students and the teachers. In the flipped classroom, we create the room, the time for the teacher to go between students and individuals, support them, help them, and they create a very good relationship between each other. And just that point is very important because there's a lot of research that indicates that good relationship in a classroom is creating the atmosphere we like to see. For us as educators, it is very necessary to know, at least think about, how do our students learn? What is the best way of a student or an individual to learn something? Learn something that you can bring with you. And to answer that question, it might be good for all of us to remember Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy is based on this very well-known triangle where we have different levels. The bottom level, which actually is the traditional level of our traditional school, where the teacher is preaching and the students are supposed to remember. That's the lowest level, sitting, gaining information and trying to remember them, and then you have some final exam. But at the top level, we have a different approach. That is what we call creating. That's the top level, where your knowledge and your skills have developed so you can create something. You can create something new out of it. And then we have those different levels down there. What we want to do is taking our students from the lowest level up to the upper levels, because that is how they take their knowledge and the skills with them instead of only remembering. And the flipped learning, the flipped classroom, is a very good way of opening up for that opportunity to take us from the lower level to the upper level of Bloom's taxonomy. In modern time, what kind of individuals is the business life calling for? That answer have been given in what is called the 4 C's. So what are the 4 C's? It is to have creative individuals. It is to have individuals with critical thinking. It is to have individuals that are very good in collaborating, working together. And it is to have individuals that are good in communication, that can talk to each other, that can share their knowledge, and so on and so forth. The 4 C's. Now, let's be frank. Is the traditional school supporting the 4 C's? Are we supporting the individual, creating individual that is good in communication, that is good in collaboration? Are we doing that? Are we supporting that individual in the traditional schoolroom? And of course we know what the answer is. We are not. The flipped learning is one way of opening that possibility to create the culture of the 4 C's. So that's one of the arguments for flipped learning. So, meine liebe österreichische Freunde, why did we flip? Or we can say it in other words, why should you flip your classroom? It is going to the learning process, respecting the students that we have today, not the students we had yesterday. Our experience and all the schools that have tried flipping their classroom have had the same result. The students' achievement is better. They get higher marks. There are less behavior problems, obviously because students are engaged in assignments, so they have not energy for the social problems. The experience in all schools is that students, teachers, and the parents, they like it better. They are more satisfied. Our students at Kaler, they are, the average age is 30 years. They all say the same. I wish this had been in school when I was there, when I was younger. What we see is that in the flipped classroom, we deliver more independent students because the focus is on the students and activates the students, having the student engaged in assignment instead of sitting passive and taking the information from the teachers. What is important also that with respect to Bloom's taxonomy, The flipped classroom opened the door for higher level of learning. Instead of only being remembering or telling them to remember things, we try to have them analyze, we try to have them to communicate between each other, we try to have them apply the understanding, and that means going into deeper understanding than the one where you are passive listening to the teacher. Not least, it supports equal right for learning. To have access to education is a part of human rights. In the traditional classroom, where one size fits all, you send the students home after listening to the teacher and they are supposed to do some homework. We know that not all the students have understood what the teacher said during the classroom. So they cannot do the homework. And many of the students do not have the support at home for the homework. But in a flipped classroom, the students have access to the teacher. The teacher is going from one table to another and has the time to support each student. So flipped learning opens in a way the door for equal rights for education. So having more equal rights, having more independent students, having more satisfied and glad students, that argument should be enough for everyone to say, let's try it. So the big question for us now, is this the school we want to have? Or do we want our school, our classroom, to look like this? It can be messy, it can be noisy, but it has engaged students, students working on assignments. It is our question. So, people, we're gonna meet on the conference. In the meantime, we would very much like you to give some thoughts to 3 key questions. First question is, yes, I am going to flip my classroom. Why should you do it? Just think about it. The second question, no, I am not going to flip my classroom. And tell the others why you are not going to do it. And the third question is, when? Tell yourself and others what you are going to do next week with respect to flip, what you're going to do next month, or what you're going to do next year. Give those 3 questions some thought. Yes, no, when. See you. Well, if you want to learn more about flipped learning, I encourage you to go take the course, online course with John Bergman. Here is the link to flippedlearningglobal.org. Here it is.